You have to be careful about making a weird show or watching a weird show.
Hello, this is Greg Smalley on Pod 366, a Weird Movies podcast. Joined this week, as I often am, by the adjusting Giles Edwards and his yellow tinted lenses.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Greg.
Hello, are you keeping the sun out of your eyes today? Or
A little bit. It's one of those bright November winter mornings, and so anything to diminish it will be good. And true sunglasses would be a bit much, even for me. So,
okay, have you cracked freezing?
yes,
Uh,
most nights have been sub-freezing the
well,
past week or two.
you're warmer than we are then, because haven't seen freezing post over the freezing mark
Oh,
today. Uh, but things will improve for us, thank God. And plus, no snow to go along with it. So if it's going to be cold, I always say you might as well have a little snow.
oh yeah,
Not a
we've
lot,
had.
but just a little. And the tiny dusting we got evaporated. It didn't even, it wasn't warm enough to melt. It just evaporated. So, so kind of the worst of both worlds there, weather-wise. But let's get into some weird movie talk instead. Um, First up, no guests to announce for next week. I am working on a couple of names for guests, but don't have anything pinned down to announce. Oh, I want to get these all up at the same time, but I'm not going to be able to for some reason. All right. Well, let's just start with this first item, which is not a movie and not new, but we might as well get it out of the way up front, and Giles may describe it a little.
Sure, this is looks like a hardback volume. It's a book with a very famous movie still from the early 20s, amber tinted sepia thing going on, a wide-eyed expression from a gentleman, a very pale gentleman, done up with black lipstick, very darkened eyebrows, a mop of black hair, and triangulated sort of under the eye makeup on him. A famous somnambulist is featured on this cover below the title and above the people responsible for it.
Yes, and the
Oh, yeah. There's also an ISBN thing.
yeah,
This looks like it's from a library.
yes, yes. So this is the reason we are showing the 366 Weird Movies Guide Volume 1 again, to show that it is landed in a public library courtesy of someone who requested it. It's the Orland Park Public Library, but now available. There's one copy circulating through interlibrary loan. So anybody who wants that free copy can submit a request to their local library, and it will come.
And perhaps even encourage that local library to have their own copy on hand for
Which which
the
is
many readers.
certainly something we would suggest people do. Your library will have an online form where you can demand that they buy copies of certain books, and this is one that you certainly could demand and buy. And this gives Giles a opportunity maybe to read it before he gets his contributor's copy, which has not been mailed out yet, because I'm waiting for volume two so I can send them both. One,
No, I think I've probably read 95% of both volumes through my own submissions and being copy editor for the things I didn't write. So, but yeah, to hold it in my hand, both volumes, one for each hand will be great.
as for volume two, I don't have an announcement date on that. I was told December. If, as the first week of December is almost over, if it gets done in December, It's going to be borderline as to whether you can get it for Christmas, maybe with expedited shipping from
Mm.
Prime, you can get it for Christmas, and maybe not. Maybe you'll just have to use your Christmas money to buy it.
Yeah, kick off the new year
Kick
with
off the
a
new year, right?
comprehensive guide.
Let's get that out, and then I can get the contributors' copies out, uh, and everybody will get off my back. Get off my back, man. But let's talk about some other new movies and old movies, but we'll start with new ones. In theaters this week, you could see this still in live
Mm.
action that Giles is about to
Yeah,
describe.
yeah. This is a city street shot head on. We can see it, the frame of the road going very nicely into the horizon line. It's a nighttime shot. See some puddles of water reflecting the street lights above, houses either side, and front and center is a woman who I'm going to guess is in her late 20s or early 30s, medium length hair, light brownish, maybe a bit red. And she's got some leggings, she's got a t-shirt on, she's out enjoying herself a nice nighttime jog through the town, and she has what looks like the friendly company of at least 5 dogs, if that bushy tail on the far left it has a beast attached to the front of it. As for the breeds, I think there's a beagle, and beyond that, my expertise drops to zero.
Beagle and 3 mutts. Yes, and what is the name of this movie if you know it?
Why? The name of this movie is Nightbitch.
Nightbitch, all one word, uh, in theaters now. Probably, I don't know where it's in theaters. I haven't checked locally, but with Amy Adams is the woman here. It's going to get a reasonable release. Did you see the trailer, Giles?
I did see the trailer.
And what did the trailer, what effect did it have on your fragile psyche?
My my fragile psyche got through that trailer just fine. It seems this movie is addressing a number of let's see, gender role related issues vis-a-vis homemaking and raising a kid. The woman in question who's out for this night jog with her fellow night bitches, presumably, is seems very much put upon with the probably better in hindsight experience of having a looks like a toddler age boy causing any amount of trouble alongside the family dog didn't seem to be at all helpful. And the husband figure who shows up as might be expected in a domestic movie like this seemed one of those well-meaning but kind of clueless guys, which, well, I guess at least he's got well-meaning, but that really only goes so far. So, uh, having known some parents, recent parents for people that age group, the depiction of the home life looked rather realistic to me.
Indeed, but there's more to it because
Oh yes, the weird element is this woman seems to be at least of a mind that she is turning at night into a dog.
right. So starts out as a normal mom-com and then takes a turn towards the metaphorically weird, although I don't know what the connection between moms and dogs is. But the idea of transformation,
Primal
like,
was a major, the primality. So yeah, I imagine the 90-minute version of the minute and a half trailer probably goes into that with considerably more depth.
sure. And it seems like the kind of movie based on the critical snippets I've read that's kind of going to be a thing where there's going to be a large contingent of the audience are sort of people who say, boy, I wish this had leaned into the weirdness more often. And another contingent which is going to say, gosh, this is a nice, funny domestic mom-com. Why'd they have to make it so weird at the end?
Yeah, I'm reminded of a quote that I know from Calvin and Hobbes years ago. A good compromise leaves everybody mad. So, yeah,
Well, we hope it's better than that. But
right.
that's kind of what I'm guessing here, based on the trailer is going to happen. It's going to end up pleasing neither camp. But we shall see. And
Mhm.
in any rate, it would almost certainly make a good double feature with another movie that didn't please a lot of people, but was still quite interesting. Dog Man with Caleb Landry Jones
Uh,
from this year. Great double feature there. We will see when this comes to VOD if we check it out. But this is one we have checked out. We checked it out early. Now it's on VOD. Giles has written it up, so he's going to talk about it a little more than I am. But first, he's going to start off by describing this rather simple still.
Very simple still. It's a two people by a railing. It's a nice wide screen shot. I'm guessing this is the good old 2.35 to really let you know you're watching a movie. We only really see the backs of them. There's a taller fellow, a shorter woman. Not much to be said about them. I believe the guy is enjoying a cigarette as they stand by a railing looking out over the sea, where there's a very pretty, somewhat ever so vaguely pinkish sunset occurring. And so all very nighttime and maybe even a little dreamy for this team.
Brad, dreamy for this team. And so that's of course, the hint that it is Dream Team, a movie, as I say, that Giles has seen and then reviewed, and I have not, despite it arguably being more up my alley than up Giles's. But
Hmm.
Giles, what can you tell us about Dream Team?
Well, my looking back and remembering this review, it's I honestly didn't have too much to say. The premise was absolutely amazing. I'll read my plot sentence here. Interpol agents Chase National and No Saint Aubergine are on the case, investigating a murderous choral conspiracy. And this is pursued as if we were watching a season of television for a show here over the course of seven cheekily titled episodes like Ashes to Asses, Doppelgangbang, and The Biggest Organ are some of the titles there. And it is a kind of dreamy movie. I almost wish maybe I'd been paying less attention to it because it's a little flat, but I will make a point here to call out the editing work, which is done by the two people who did pretty much all the work for this, writing it, producing it, directing it, and so on. Whitney Horn and Lev Kalman. It is visually very cool to watch, and everything is very seamless one thing into another, very smooth, conducive to dreaming kind of thing with little things dropped and then picked up later without, making any, loud hitting the floor noises. Um, that said, uh, I guess if I had one wish for it, it might be either slightly more convincing or slightly less convincing performances.
Hmm.
Because where it landed, it was, whenever it was left to the actors on screen, the rough edges appeared more than otherwise in the movie. But one of those things that I'm happy is there, but really can't think of someone I'd say, hey, you got to check this out.
Well, if I'm not wrong, it's a parody of a certain very, very narrow style, which is early 90s cable, mildly erotic thrillers.
Yes,
The
and
sort of only example I can think of is Silk Stalkings.
oh
That's
gosh,
the
yep.
only example uh, Robert
I
Albert could think of this particular subgenre. I also thought of the Cinemax After Dark um, erotic thrillers that they would run. However, those were always, I think, quite a bit steamier than this.
oh yeah, this is the eroticism kind of peaks with the titles of the episodes, and I guess the discussion of Coral is in depth enough that it's well, sex life is quite somewhat too strong a phrase, but anyway, it's among other things one learns about Coral in this movie is its life cycle, shall we say?
Right. But as for humans go, we're not dealing with a lot of sex and nudity.
Now, I recall, yes, one brief top scene. So
Topless.
topless. Oh yeah, yes. Scene of the a topless scene of the top, kind of thing that
Top
back
scene
before
could be very different. So.
it would be kind of thing that back before PG-13 existed, this would fall squarely into PG.
Okay. So that's kind of what you're dealing with. Surrealist?
Some surreal moments, some the focus on the choral thing is conceptually a bit odd, how far they push that. But yeah, as I said, the surrealism ties in nicely with the editing job of keeping this a darn visually smooth uh, sequence.
Okay. Weird?
Not not so much. I kind of think that if
Everything
they
you've described sounds pretty weird. So you maybe
yeah, it was more maybe odd. I guess I'd say that if they had pursued the choral thing like with a straight face,
Hmm.
that might have, tipped it into weird. It's like, yeah, there's a lot of odd and a few weird things, but I left the movie not going, "Ooh, that was strange." And as you know, I'm a bit more prone to that than you are. So,
Hmm. Okay, well, that's interesting. I'm going to hopefully get to check it out myself and see if I have the same opinion or a different opinion about it.
yeah.
But I suppose we should just move on to something that this will likely be the image that goes on the YouTube. We'll see. Maybe YouTube won't like this image, but uh,
Squares. Too many
this is the
squares out
clickbait.
there.
This is the clickbait image of this week. So Giles, would you describe our clickbait image?
Sure. The proportions of this image suggest this is probably a Blu-ray disc cover, maybe. But it's a sliced wood, possibly pine, unfinished. On dominating the right half of it is a metal plaque with a keyhole. And through this keyhole, we're ostensibly viewing two women in a semi-embrace, a sort of a fondling embrace, looking into each other's eyes with thoughts of sexiness. There's some side breast that we can see on the one of them, and on the other we see that the other's hand is on the breast, and so something um, lesbian is going on in this image within the keyhole on this uh, wooden looking cover item here that is some of the collected works of a famous director.
Well, would you say that is a softwood we're looking at, or?
That's more of a hardwood.
And thus the title of the book, Hard, or the book, the movie collection, Hardwood, the adult features of Ed Wood. And so these are some of the final movies of Ed Wood as he's fallen on hard times, is no longer making movies he's passionate about, like Plan 9 from Outer Space, Bride of the Monster, and Glenn or Glinda, but instead is directing pornography. Um, the three features here are Necromania from 1971, which is the most famous of these, the only one that had been widely seen, I think. Something called The Only House in Town, which I believe is only a softcore one, but I may be incorrect. And a never before seen Ed Wood movie, The Young Marrieds. And then they throw in another Ed Wood written but not directed movie called Shotgun Wedding, about which I know nothing. It's described as exploitation, so I suspect it's not quite as sexy as the others. Um, these movies exist in both are presented on disc, some of them, at least Necromania and The Young Marrieds, in both softcore versions and hardcore versions, uh, which is something that they would have made at the time, uh, depending on local censorship laws and who you could show it to. Necromania made in 1971, so it actually predates Deep Throat. It's actually before Porno Chic, so it would be very much an underground feature of dubious legality. It features, notably, Wood appears in the movie in drag in a pink baby doll. And if you can imagine, he was in his 60s at the time, I believe, puffy faced, booze
Mm.
ravaged, in a baby doll, not going to be a pretty sight. Does not do any sex acts, I believe. It has Renee Bond, who was an actress who went back and forth between exploitation movies and then hardcore porn movies when they came in fashion. And, it's made at a time when people thought hardcore sex in movies was going to be a thing,
Mm.
going to be a thing that just like our movies, and it was going to be, the wave of the future, and movies in 2024 would, of course, movies for adults would, of course, have unsimulated sex in them for the sex scenes. Everybody was a little naive on that point, but they were trying to make real movies and not just a nonstop parade of sex, which is what you get from pornography today. There were scripts and reasons for people to be having sex, as strained as those reasons might be. The Only House in Town, don't know anything about, except that the box says it features Ushi Digart, who was in some Russ Meyer movies, a very buxom young lady. She was in a lot of exploitation movies. No actual hardcore sex movies to my knowledge. She stayed on the softcore side of things. And of course, that was The Only House in Town. And of course, The Young Marrieds pretty much was thought to be a lost movie. I don't believe anybody's ever seen it, but here it is in two versions, the soft and the hard. And there are a ton of special features. I've got
Yeah.
Bobcat Goldthwait and Dana Gould talking about how much they love Ed Wood, although probably not these three movies in particular. And what I thought was maybe the most interesting extra is the Ed Wood episode from Britain's influential The Incredibly Strange Film Show, which aired in the, I believe, early 90s, was picked up and shown on PBS in these countries, and was a way to introduce people to cult movies at
Mm.
the time, which were not really, the idea of cult movies in a cult canon was just sort of solidifying, and the idea that people would go out and watch these bad and or weird movies on purpose. There were just because of the video explosion, people no longer had to go to midnight movies to see these things
Uh,
or venture into the grindhouse to try to find them. So it was an exciting time, and they were trying to bring attention to some of these weird titles from the 60s. And the Incredibly Strange Film Show, I was lucky enough to see on PBS and influenced my taste. Besides Ed Wood, they had episodes on John Waters, episodes on Russ Meyer, episodes on the Hong Kong New Wave, and stuff like that. And it was a
yeah.
very, very cool series.
Oh gosh. And yep, Sam Raimi, Herschel Gordon Lewis.
Yeah,
That's a heck of a roster.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It was a very, very cool and informative show. I'd like to see the whole thing released. It probably is released somewhere, but those would be fun to revisit since I only saw them on their original broadcasts. But speaking of wood, here's something that also comes in wood. Uh, so a nice segue. Giles, describe what we see here.
This is an advertisement showcasing a delightful looking Blu-ray special release of a motion picture that's been on the festival circuit for the past decade and has been really received incredibly well by crowds all over this country, all over Canada, and they've even, I believe, made forays across one or both of our neighboring oceans. This is featuring the carved, wooden cased, super duper special edition of a Cheslick classic that has two Blu-rays, one of them with the feature and any number of commentaries, and the other with I've read from them as they've quote live about it, countless extras showing behind the scenes, this, that, and the other. So this is the better than Steelbook, I guess, even though it's wooden and not
Ooh.
metal.
Yeah,
But a steelbook within the wooden anyway. So yes, and so yeah, laser carved, a nice picture of a triple X giant jug of something by some apple trees looming above a landscape which has the title of the picture in question.
all right. And the title of the picture in question is,
Hundreds of beavers.
which you probably know about if you're listening to this, and maybe even if you're not, because it's Hundreds of Beavers has done it incredibly well, I would say, based on its budget and what we expected from it. I have not met anyone who has seen the movie who does not love it, not just like it, but does not love
Mhm.
it. Um, it is even up for awards consideration, although unlikely to win anything. But they are making a strong push for it to be considered. I think things like production design, granted, given what they were working with, is a place we might be able to sneak it in some recognition for it. Um, Costuming, perhaps.
Oh, costuming, definitely. That's I don't think I've ever seen three costumes pushed so far.
At any rate, it's Hundreds of Beavers. We've done a Hundreds of Beavers episode, so I'm assuming everybody's familiar. How would you describe it for anybody who's unfamiliar with it, Giles?
I describe it live action cartoon, smacks of early silent comedies. There's, I believe, one spoken line in it. There's everything going on at once in most of the frames. I recall I've seen it twice, and it was two very different viewing experiences. I was able to look at the edges of the action, so to speak, and saw that Cheslick and Company really just put every idea they had in their heads into this snow stick, as the director himself describes the type of wacky, violent comedy that goes on. I describe it as a hard PG rating, so anyone, 7, 8 or older, I'd feel rather comfortable. Well, as an uncle anyway, I can be a little, sneaky, but I feel comfortable watching that alongside and showing off this wonderful bit of fun, wacky merriment, and just a lot of joy in it, and it's a joy to watch.
Basically about a Canadian
Oh, right. The story,
Apple,
right?
well, I'm just going to add Canadian Applejack distiller who's so, sort of forced to learn to become a fur trapper and tasked with the quest to deliver hundreds of beaver pelts in order to win the hand of a fair maiden. Good enough?
Yeah.
Okay. Um, that's hundreds of beavers. And so this kind of dropped by surprise. Saw it on their Twitter when they were announcing that, hey, we sold out. So they sold out of their first setting, and there were so many orders from fans, people ordering off their mailing list that they crashed the website. The website's back up. We'll link it. You can buy it there. You can buy it at Vinegar Syndrome, although Vinegar Syndrome does not have the wooden slipcase. Those wooden slipcases were still available at the time we were recording this.
Hmm.
By the time you view this, I guess there's a possibility they could already be sold out, given the rate that they say these are being sold at. Anyway, these are limited editions, and I do have it on some authority that it will go into wider standard edition distribution on January 25th.
Okay. Yeah, because I know the original standard edition sold out, and they were, yeah, working on getting more of that. So,
Yeah. Well, they're selling as I understand it, they're selling these in multiple editions.
yeah.
There's this edition, there's another limited edition, and then maybe there's even a third limited edition with a different
Oh,
song
I know they're working on VHS
and
possibilities
a
for
VHS.
those who do that.
That's before you get, so this is all before you get to the mass market edition that they're
Yeah.
going to have. So they're going to do well on physical media, which is a good thing to see. Hundreds of beavers, folks. You can check out our interview with the always hilarious Mike Cheslick and the guy with a million names, Ryan Cruz Bricks Toll,
Ryland Hughes.
Ryland
Right,
T.
yeah, it's Ryland Brickson, something like that.
Brickson Cole.
Yeah.
All right, who starred and co-wrote. And our last physical media item of the day for this week is a Ultra HD release. Giles, the cover, describe if you would.
Okay, let me see. Okay, 16th century armor thing going on here. We got a kind of not frazzle, I don't know, very intense looking conquistador guy with shoulder length, sandy blonde hair looking off to the side, done up in fairly full armor over a purple tunic, and he is somewhat unsettlingly gripping the head of a young woman uh, close to his chest, and she is gazing in the same direction as he is at something we don't know. And she is done up in very high, fine 16th century Spanish maiden regalia. And together they make a an interesting father-daughter duo for this particular nice edition of a movie that's been around for over, geez, is it over 50 years now?
About 50, going on 50 years.
Um,
It's Aguirre, The Wrath of God, a movie that is sort of on the edges of weirdness, has that crazy, one of the great, probably the greatest crazy performance from Klaus Kinski
oh yeah.
and directed by Herzog, has some surreal flourishes. You probably know it. It's considered a world cinema classic, and rightfully so. Now it's in 4K. I don't think there's anything new about this edition except that it's in 4K. So it's out there from Shout Select, who managed to get the rights to Herzog's movie if you want it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
oh, go ahead.
Oh yeah, just a brief bit of trivia. The review for this movie was my second as an official writer for 366 back in spring of 2015.
All right. So it has special meaning to Giles.
Yeah, we can do a 10th anniversary edition of my review.
The one thing I wanted to do before we sign off is last week, of course, was Thanksgiving, and we had no show. Amazingly, a ton of movies, too many for us to cover, actually dropped on Thanksgiving weekend. And so I'm going to run through some of those, which we've written down in print before, but you can check them out. But just run through what came out last week for your holiday shopping pleasure. First off, the week before that, we discussed the Reflecting Skin and Bug because our guests Dan Pullen and Bradley Cornish wanted to discuss it. Those came out this week or last week. Versions of Bug and The Reflecting Skin. There's also the first release of a new movie from Jammin' Winans, The Myth of Man, which is in very limited release and will probably show up on VOD soon. There was Alfred Hitchcock, The Iconic Film Collection, which was a beautiful book style DVD collection, which includes, of course, Vertigo. There was, I'm just looking for the apocryphal or the canonically weird ones. Electric Dragon 80,000 Volts, or an apocryphally weird movie, was released on Blu-ray for the first time. It had been on DVD, but those were very hard to find. Mononoke, the movie, Phantom in the Rain, which also has an alternate title, showed up on Netflix, streaming on Netflix. Santa Claus, 1959 Mexican version, was re-released, although I don't think it's any different than the 2001 Blu-ray release. That had presumably gone out of print and they needed some more for this season. And then there was a version of The Tenant came out. I think that was from Vinegar Syndrome. Version of Roman
Yep.
Polanski's The Tenant came out on UHD and Blu-ray, and also Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory joined the 4K UHD club, and that's among other releases that we didn't even have time to get to. Any thoughts on any of those, Giles, in the short minute we have left?
No, if, it being on Netflix, you have no excuse if you have a subscription not to check out Mononoke, the movie, or whatever it's put under. It's three other titles that I checked
Yeah.
out here. And Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, that's Steelbook, so that's quality. So whatever edition you've got now is nothing compared to this.
Do you actually own any Steelbooks, Giles?
Uh, I own maybe three.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Porco Rosso, I have that on Steelbook.
What's that?
Porco Rosso,
Oh,
the Studio Ghibli thing, that's a beautiful steelbook. They have a whole line of beautiful steelbook releases. So, but
okay.
yeah,
Well, I think that should do it. As I say, no guest next week unless it is a surprise guest, but we are working on that. And soon we'll also have our rundown of the movies of the year. So, Giles, catch up on the weird movies you've missed. We
yes, sir.
are going to say goodbye. Any final words, Giles?
Well, keep warm and hydrate. Winter is upon us.
I definitely agree with that. All right. We will see you guys next week, especially if I can figure out how to end this recording. Okay. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye bye.
Weird. Yeah, I guess that is the word for it. Weird.